From glory to destruction, Persia and the final prophecies. The Persian Empire, one of the largest empires in history, went through great periods of prosperity. Yet, like all powerful empires, its greatness had to face decline and eventual collapse. The destruction of Persia is an integral part of the prophecies in the Bible, and these prophecies not only reflect the end of an empire but also signify the shifting of nations within God's grand plan. What Daniel and Ezekiel foresaw regarding Persia was not only judgment but also a lesson in pride, defiance against God, and the consequences that each nation faces when they stray from the righteous path. The destruction of Persia, a part of the final battle. Looking back at Persia's history, we cannot help but notice a cycle from prosperity to decay. While Persia was once a mighty empire, a tool in God's hands to rescue the nation of Israel, by its end, Persia became a part of the alliance of Israel's enemies in the great battle, the battle between the nations of the world and Israel, the chosen people of God. In the book of Ezekiel, we are warned about the final war, an assault on Israel led by various nations, including Persia. Ezekiel 38 describes this attack as a mighty storm, with armies from multiple nations rising up against Israel, the nation God has protected and restored. However, in the brutality of this war, we also see that ultimately, God will intervene powerfully and defeat the enemy's armies. When Persia is mentioned in this prophecy, it is no longer the appearance of a redemptive empire, but a nation participating in the alliance against Israel, opposing God's plan. Persia's involvement in this battle as an adversary to Israel signals not only a political shift but also a change in the relationship between nations and God. Persia, once a tool for redemption, now becomes part of the alliance that God will fight against. God's intervention, Israel's victory. Even though Persia and other nations participate in the war against Israel, we cannot overlook a crucial event in the prophecies: God's intervention. In Ezekiel 38-53, God declares that he will display his power through a mighty attack against the enemy alliance. God will not allow Israel to be destroyed but will fight on behalf of his people. The enemies will face God's severe judgment, and he himself will thwart all their plans. In God's decree, these attacks will not only result in the destruction of the armies, but also be a judgment against the nations participating in the war. God will bring earthquakes, hail, and panic among the armies of the nations opposing Israel. This is an unimaginable intervention where all of God's might will be poured out, defeating the enemy, protecting Israel, and proving his power. God says through Ezekiel, "I will bring rain, storms, and fire to destroy you. Then you will know that I am the Lord." Ezekiel 38-22. This is the judgment upon Persia and the nations involved in the final battle. Despite Persia's strength and grandeur for a long time, when faced with God's intervention, all its power and might will be overcome. Persia and its relationship with Israel. The return of a sacred bond. Though Persia will join the alliance that against Israel in the future, the prophecies in Jeremiah and Ezekiel not only speak of judgment but also contain a promise of restoration. Persia, like every other nation, may make mistakes and stand against God, but God always offers an opportunity for repentance and restoration. While these nations face judgment for opposing Israel, God does not completely abandon them. God declares through Jeremiah, "I will restore the exiles of Elam, declares the Lord." Jeremiah 4:9 banding 3:9. While Persia will be part of the war against Israel and face judgment, God still leaves the door open for restoration, providing an opportunity for those who turn back to him. For Persia, as for all nations, repentance and a return to God will offer a chance for restoration and forgiveness. A great battle, the end of an empire, the beginning of a new era. The final battle between the nations, including Persia, against Israel is not just a conflict between nations but a battle between good and evil, between God's plan and those who oppose him. Although Persia will play a role in this war, the empire's failure will not mark the end of all things. In fact, this judgment will usher in a new era, an era of restoration, where God will prove his power and lead Israel to ultimate victory. When the nations engage in the final war, God will not only fight to protect his people but also to demonstrate his absolute victory over all earthly powers and authorities. Persia, despite its past grandeur, will ultimately face judgment and replacement, but through this judgment, a new era of restoration and peace will begin, and in this era, God's righteousness will reign. Conclusion: a grand story of God's intervention. The story of Persia is a testament to God's miraculous intervention in the flow of history. The Persian Empire, once a tool for the redemption of Israel, became part of the final battle against the chosen people of God. Yet through judgment, we see that no empire or nation, no matter how powerful, can escape the judgment of God and must face his righteousness. Though Persia's decline may have already occurred, the ultimate message we receive is a warning for all nations and peoples. God is the Lord of history, and all power on earth must submit to him. Though Persia was once a tool of redemption, God's final judgment will bring all things into the perfect restoration he has ordained.